We have a 27-year-old female who just died of anaphylactic shock, followed by a cardiac arrest, which lasted about 20 to 40 minutes.
She had severe asthma since she is 3 years of age.
We can't use the lungs because of her history of asthma.
And what happened in this case, she couldn't get to the hospital.
It's the middle of the night, and Joanne Auger has just died. Down the hall, her parents, Gilles and Marguerite, ponder their decision.
The doctor just told me that there was practically no hope, that there was no brain activities. And as I came back home with my wife, there was a telephone note on the corner of the table telling me to call Mr. Anthony. And it was about the, how do you say that, organ donations. At first, I reacted to that because Joanne was still there in my heart, and she was still there living. So I called him just the same. And he was kind with me, and he explained everything. And then I understood, and I said yes.
The platelets are 131. The family has consented to organ donation, and there are no restrictions. I'm offering you the liver.
Anyways, when somebody is dead, he's dead. And if there is a way organs could be used to save somebody else's life, why not?
L'âme est partie. C'est l'âme qui est importante. Le corps a plus d'importance. Mais il est tellement précieux pour celui qui attend, qui peut-être pourrait, avec un organe, pouvoir vivre encore de longues années. Je suis sûre que Joanne nous entend sûrement, et elle est d'accord avec nous sûrement.
S'il vous plaît.
Morning. Joanne Auger has been brain dead for hours. The ventilator that kept her heart and lungs working is disconnected. The surgeons work fast. They have just 4 hours to remove her heart, get it to another hospital, and transplant it in someone else. Next, her liver.
Merci beaucoup, on continue.
Then, her 2 kidneys. And last, her pancreas. Within 24 hours, 5 people will be grateful for Joanne Auger's generosity. But such generosity is rare. 2,000 Canadians are on the waiting list for organ transplants. Only half can expect to get them. In Quebec, last year was an exceptionally bad year for organ donations. 41 people died waiting for transplants. Francisco Benson was one of them.
My father was a warm, caring, loving, generous person. He was a very nice father. He loved to cook and especially liked baseball.
He was 64 years old and had 17 grandchildren.
He used to play with me a lot, tickle me, all those fun things.
But he was sick and desperately needed a new heart.
And my father was very scared. He was having a lot of pain.
Francisco Benson couldn't hold out. In Quebec, it usually takes 5 months to get a heart.
I was very frustrated, very frustrated. He could have been alive today if we had enough donors.
Victor Davis is on his way home. He is on world record pace.
Victor Davis talked to his family about organ donation.
Campaigns like this try to change attitudes.
6 people received life-giving transplants.
And they have. 3 out of 4 Canadians say they're willing to donate their organs for transplant after they die. But only about half of them actually sign the consent form on the back of their Medicare card or driver's license. That's why this transplant surgeon says it's time for more drastic measures.
I'm looking for any way that we can improve the supply of organs.
Dr. Francis Sutherland and others want a system called presumed consent, the opposite of what we have now.
It would become an automatic that any brain-dead person that's a suitable organ donor would automatically have their organs removed without consenting the family. And the only reason that they wouldn't be removed would be after looking at the National Register to see that they've in fact said in advance that they don't want this to happen.
That's how it works in most of Europe, and organ donation in some countries there is 25% higher than in Canada.
But in other, it has given worse results, like in France, for example.
Dr. Jacques Cormand, a transplant surgeon against presumed consent. He heads Quebec's transplant agency.
In those countries, only between 1% and 2% of people have manifested their disagreement with organ donation. This certainly do not represent the reality. I mean, there are more people that disagree with organ donation, maybe 10, maybe 20%, I don't know. So that means that if you follow that law, you will harvest organs from people that did not agree.
Presumed consent is a dilemma for medical ethicists.
Do you have a right to what happens to your body? Up till now, I think we've largely assumed you do. And I think there's a big step to jump to the conclusion that, no, once you're dead, we can do whatever we want with you, unless you go out of your way to sign refusal. On the other side of the argument, for presumed consent, it's hard not to sympathize when you or your loved one is going to die because there isn't an available donor organ. It's pretty hard to accept that morally when you know that there are organs that could have been available and they're not there, not because somebody was opposed to it, but somebody was either apathetic or misguided in their religious beliefs or simply ignorant. And those aren't really good enough reasons to let somebody die.
Polls show Canadians are split over presumed consent, so many believe there's an ethical obligation to exhaust all other options first. Such as clearing up religious misconceptions. Many Catholics think they're not allowed to donate their organs. Yet Bishop Leonard Crowley has signed his donor card.
It is permitted because it is, in a sense, meritorious. It's a matter of charity, of helping someone who is in need.
While Islamic scholars are split over the issue, Orthodox Jewish authorities are unanimous. Most Jews don't know that organ donation is one instance where Judaism allows the body to be desecrated.
If anything can be done to save a human life, to prolong the blessings of life, then it is absolutely not only permitted but advisable, if not obligatory.
On the front lines, there are other myths. Anthony D'Amicantonio approaches grieving families. They often worry organs will be removed before their relative is really dead.
What I want them to understand is cerebral death equals death as we know it. Make them understand that if we unplug the ventilator, which makes this patient breathe, this patient's heart would eventually die, would eventually stop because of the lack of oxygen. Make him understand that that person is not feeling anything anymore.
Another fear is that the fact that they would sign a donation card would hasten the death. That is, that they wouldn't receive all the care that they should receive. The cerebral death never is declared by transplant surgeons. It is completely independent and it has to be signed by two different doctors.
Others are just uncomfortable with the idea of removing organs.
Sometimes people have these horrific visions of how terrible and how that must be. We don't want to put any more harm on our loved one who's just died. Leave them in peace, don't hurt them. And I think if we knew what happens to them through just normal embalming preparation for funerals, we'd say, hold on a second, this is not any worse, and it may save a life.
In the United States, they're also trying to get more people to donate their organs, but they're looking at blatant incentives, such as paying for the donor's funeral. And another idea, if you've signed a donor card and wind up needing a transplant yourself, you'll get an organ before someone who didn't sign a donor card. The critics say that creates two classes of sick people, but at the same time, it sends a strong message. Don't expect to get what you're not willing to give.
When you ask somebody if he would donate his organ, he tells you, oh no. And then you ask him, would you accept the liver for your child? They say, oh yes. So that brings some reflections.
Here in Canada, people are willing to donate, but no one's asking them to. A poll shows just 1 in 10 Canadian doctors routinely ask grieving families about organ donation. So now, Quebec law requires hospitals to report all potential donors to Quebec Transplant. The government has increased the agency's budget 6-fold. Quebec Transplant can now pay hospitals cash to cover the costs of removing organs, then transporting and transplanting them.
Can I speak to the surgeon, transplant surgeon on call, please?
It's hired more people to coordinate everything.
50% potential donors weren't identified.
And to teach doctors and nurses who is a potential donor.
Some of them don't understand or believe that a patient of 65, 70, 80 who meets the criteria of brain dead is a donor. If every hospital in our province is about 150 to 160 hospitals were to refer one donor a year, just one, we would double our donation pool and therefore triple our transplants.
We light up a candle in his memory and we pray.
All this comes too late for Francisco Bengtson, but his family can take some comfort in knowing these changes are slowly making a difference.
There's no need for anybody to go through what we went through. It was very painful for everybody.
The Augers pray their daughter's legacy will help ease their pain.
If my little girl would be in the hospital waiting for her heart, I would be glad. In a way, we will be keeping, Joanne will be living in somebody else. And her death would not have been for nothing.
Joanne Auger's heart went to a dying woman, her liver to a dying man, her kidneys to 2 men being kept alive on dialysis, the islet cells from her pancreas to save the life of a diabetic. Lynn Herzeg, CBC News, Montreal.